So this is just another potential writer program, Python program using a pen, sort of thing you might get in the exam. So we've got the following spec. So the user's asked to input 3 numbers, which are integers. Then if any 2 of the numbers are the same, program outputs 2. And if all 3 are the same, it outputs all. And if none of them are the same, it outputs none, just like that. So what we're looking to do is, first of all, on all these things, we get an input. So we could use a loop to get this input, but for this simple program, we'll just make some variables. Num1 equals int input, and I'll just say enter a number. Shorten it down a bit. So we're going to have another one of those. Integer input, enter a number. And of course we've got the integer inputs to cast the data type to an integer to make sure that that is a number. And this is the third one. So we've got our 3 numbers now in num1, num2 and num3. So then we're going to need to use a selection statement to decide whether they're all the same, or whether 2 of them are, or whether none of them are. So I'm going to start off with the idea that, are they all the same? So if num1 is exact equivalent to num2, and, so we've got a Boolean and in here, num2 exact equivalent to num3, and the colon at the end to show that it's going to be an indent because it's an if statement. We're going to print, and it asks us to print all if they're all the same, so we'll just do that. So elif, and this is where we want to check to see whether 2 of them are the same. So if num1 is exact equivalent to num2, and in this case we're going to have Boolean or, so or num1 exact equivalent to num2, or num2 exact equivalent to num3, like this. So we've said if number 1 is the same as number 2, or number 1 is the same as, sorry, not number 2 there, of course, because that's the same question. Number 3. Just shows, it's just helpful to read your code back to yourself sometime, make sure you haven't made a mistake. So if num1 is the same as num2, or num1 is the same as num3, or num2 is the same as num3, then we can decide that 2 of them are the same. So go with my colon on the end there again, and I can print 2. Well, if none of those scenarios are right, then it must be that none of them are the same. So we can go with an else on that. So we'll just go for else, just give ourselves a bit more room. Else we can print none. And if we run that code, we might test that code with 1, 2, 3, and it should come out with none. And if we tested it with 1, 1, 2, it should come out with 2. Or if we tested it with 1, 2, 2, it should come out with 2. And of course 1, 1, 1 if you come out with all like that. So we can think about this idea of how we might test the code. I mean, it's unlikely that they'd ask you to do that in the exam, but they might ask you a separate question about how to test code in the exam. So here we've got 3 inputs, and we're probably, unless they've done that for us, we're probably going to get, you know, a mark for getting the inputs and 3 separate inputs. We might get another mark for sensible variable names and perhaps making it an integer. And we might get a mark for using selection, and a correct mark for the correct Boolean operators, and another mark for potentially for printing things in the right place. And that is probably going to give us about 5 marks for that one.